Here's the thing. I don't feel like doing equipment reviews right now. I want to think about, share, illuminate other things. More important things. You know what I'm talking about. Life in the age of COVID-19, which actually has been the subject of my last two videos. But part of keeping calm and carrying on, the main theme of our first video on the pandemic, is finding or asserting normalcy in abnormal times. And photography, videography, filmmaking, movies, gear reviews, among many, many other things, can be constructive sources of normalcy. Escapism is not always a dirty word for you, dear viewers, and for me. So, onward. For the next however many minutes, I'm narrowing my focus, decoupling myself from the bigger picture, willing myself to return to my enthusiasms and continuing quest to understand what it is I'm seeing, and tell you, as if none of this other stuff were happening, about a super color-accurate, high-resolution monitor, beautiful for and aimed at photographers. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and today I want to talk to you about BenQ's SW321C 4K 32-inch color monitor. Now, the problem I have is this. Other than video editing, which I love to do, lose track of time when I do it, practically swim in it, inhale it, until now I've wanted to spend as little time in front of a monitor for post-work as possible. That's because I wish I had the wherewithal to turn my images over to a printer, not a machine, a person with whom I could collaborate to bring out the full richness of what I'd captured. But I don't, and I'm willing to live with the trade-offs that result happily. That's because when it comes to photography, I am not like Ansel Adams. I've never been like Ansel Adams, and I'm not just talking about skill or proclivity for hiking deep into national parks with a Gigundo view camera in the dead of winter. I mean, I wasn't like Ansel Adams when I had my own darkroom or ran the darkroom program at a summer camp almost half a century ago. I didn't derive joy from heavy manipulation of my images in post, though yes, there was something magical about dodging and burning, a little dodging and burning, and then seeing that image come up inside that tray of developer. Still, digital workflow has done pretty much nothing to change how much time I want to spend in that pursuit. Of course, Ansel Adams' work was and remains extraordinary. The joy of photography for me, however, is in the capture, most especially my interactions with people inhabiting my frames on the street, and yes, of course, the final image within which those interactions are captured. Not the process that gets me from one to the other, especially since my objective is to capture as much of the final image as possible without need to edit at the moment I trip the shutter. On top of that, I generally see and print display in black and white. By this I mean, color is rarely the reason I shoot an image. It's not what attracts me to a scene. I see geometry, shape, light and shadow, juxtaposition, contradiction, humor, soul, suffering. I like the abstraction or distillation of an image's essence that is inherent to black and white photography. Not that you can't find that in color images, it's just that color is not what usually speaks to me. I mean, I even have my EVFs set to monochrome. So, why on earth would I or someone like me care about a super color accurate photographer's monitor, let alone the ability to see on that monitor exactly what one would get from a print? Because with the latest generation of sensors, my eye is evolving. More often now, I do see in color. Sometimes I do print in color, though it's not me in a darkroom. I'm sending it out to a lab. The first time I opened up Lightroom and put up this image from our Coney Island shoot on the 321C, my jaw dropped. It became one of the primary images in our first ever photo book, which I guess makes this the right time to say, hey, we're now taking pre-orders for the very first run of our brand new Streets of New York photo book now. If you love street photography, if you love New York City, if you want to see again, need to see again, like I do, what New York was like just before we went into lockdown, hop over to www.3bmep.com/books and take a closer look. It's a great way for us to share our love for New York street photography, and it's a wonderful way for you to support the work we do. So thanks. We'd love to send you a copy. And oh yeah, if you enjoy this kind of video, we hope you'll consider supporting our work by joining us over on Patreon. I'll put links to both of these down in the show notes below. So, okay, back to my take on the 321C, which I find myself promising this all the time and falling short, but won't take me very long because A, just about a year ago, I reviewed their $1,100 SW271 4K monitor, and I subtitled that video, "So this is what my camera can capture." I was stunned by how natural it rendered, truer to how I remembered the scene than what I saw on my iMac. Especially interesting since I thought my 2017 iMac Retina 5K was the bomb. In other words, I already expected the 321C to be outstanding, and it is. I'll put a link to that review in the show notes down below. B. The SW321C, that guy, is pretty much a bigger, refined version of the SW271. On the one hand, it has the same industrial design language, same solid build quality, same individual calibration report from the factory, same contrast ratio as the 271, or is that right? I'll have to double check. Same ability to rotate 90 degrees for portrait mode, too, if that floats your boat. I don't need it. On the other hand, the 321C has an updated IPS panel with an anti-glare and anti-reflection screen, which requires this nifty Neato tool whenever it needs cleaning. Something called paper color sync technology to ensure that what you see is what you'll print, hold that thought. The addition of the IMAX P3 color gamut and HLG, so you have more than a decent shot of eliminating differences from one screen to the other. 16-bit 3D LUTs, not big on my list, and a second-generation hotkey puck. Think of it as a mouse operating most like the latest automotive controllers you'd find, for example, in a Mini Countryman, both of which work quite well. And C, the resultant takeaway is that I think this monitor is great and I have no intention of handing it back. That's it, really. A single image on that gorgeous 32-inch calibrated screen was enough to make me go, oh baby. Perfect timing, since I've spent the better part of the last 12 months muttering under my breath about the Panasonic HD TV I've been using as my secondary display, so utterly impossible to match to my iMac, even with calibration tools, that for the past few months I just set the saturation to that puppy to 0, and I still didn't like the quality of text when I used it for email or browsing. Of course, once I saw what the 321C could do for my photographs, I pulled up Final Cut Pro 10 and began looking through our videos. OMG. Forget about log. Not that I ever really cut into it. Too much overhead for what we do. Doesn't matter. Our cameras, most especially our Leicas and our Panasonics, capture lovely, astoundingly good color with dynamic range absolutely appropriate and beautiful for what we do. This is an important qualifier. I like to reduce the dynamic range requirements of any particular scene anyway, and then when I can't, I choose to live with the resulting dynamic range trade-offs, which is not a problem because these stories we want to tell, the emotions we want to convey, the kind of imagery we shoot simply don't rely on 15 stops of dynamic range. 11 to 14 are more than adequate because we also tend to shoot at base ISO. There is a big difference. I'm also delighted that the 321C resolves the one nagging issue I had with the 271 for video. Audio latency gone. Yeehaw! Now, to be fair, I don't like how the ports on the 321C, nor the 271 for that matter, are located and oriented. I'd much prefer they pointed out the back rather than down toward the desk. It's simply a pain for me to see them when I have to connect cables. I have to place the screen face down on my desk. No bueno. I noticed once or twice that the image on the 321C would momentarily freeze during playback, but I am not certain why. It's so infrequent that I could not replicate it, though I have a gnawing sense it's actually the OWC dock I've been using, because that dock appears to be the source of a couple of other problems. Is it a limitation of the Radeon 580 with 8 gigabytes inside my iMac driving an external monitor? I don't really think so, but to be determined. Speaking of ports, which is what the dock is all about, I wish the 321C's USB-C port was Thunderbolt 3 and that there were 2 of them, so I could use the monitor to daisy chain to my RAID systems. The brightness rating is lower on the 321C than it is on the 271, 250 versus 350 nits, though I am fine with it here in the Batcave, the screen shade and panel treatment really doing the business. In fact, this is one instance where I'm glad to ignore the maximum brightness specs. More isn't necessarily better. I'm convinced using a lower brightness level will save my eyeballs from burnout over the long run, though, of course, I or you can always turn down the brightness on a 27-inch iMac or any other monitor, which I've already done. It's also worth noting that, though without them side by side, it doesn't really matter to me yet again, and I don't think it would matter anyway, the 271 actually has a higher PPI spec, pixels per inch, than the 321C, 163 to 137. Oh well. Bottom line, the imaging of the 321C, appropriate brightness, exceptional color fidelity, and wonderful tonality, combined with the absence of any kind of reflection or glare, are revelatory. There is an organic quality to photographs and video wholly missing from my iMac, which surprises the heck out of me, but it is what it is. Beyond the imagery and the ease with which I can switch among monitor modes, to which the hotkey puck gives me direct access, rather than futzing with software menus, hey, this is actually very useful. It is the paper color sync technology that is intriguing to me now that we are editing for print, both large scale and books. Except, it would be a lot more intriguing to me if it were compatible with a much wider array of printers than it is currently. A couple of Canon and Epson printers is it. And I could use paper color sync with those printers attached wirelessly, or perhaps more importantly, given our developing workflow for printing, working remotely with a third-party publisher and their printer. For the moment, it's not clear to me that any of this is possible, and I have no way to really test it. But guys, those of you who are more familiar with color printing and calibration than I, maybe you can recommend an alternative path to the same goal. Please let me know in the comments section below. In other words, beyond what I don't know, and ought to, it is still the case that the 321C doesn't exist in a vacuum. It does have competitors. I'm fairly certain there are alternative paths to a similar result, and we need to talk with some specificity about it. So let's do what we can, beginning with BenQ's own $700 PD3200U. This is also a 32-inch 16:9 4K IPS monitor, but at $700, it's just about 1/3 the price. Why should the 321C cost so much more? Well, for me, if it's anything, it's the updated panel's anti-glare and anti-reflective finish, first, second, and third, the extra screen real estate, a very noticeable fourth. The fact that the panel can display 98 or 99% Adobe RBG, or that it has nominally better color technology, is for now basically irrelevant to me, but of course your mileage may vary, that's fine. But does that make the 321C worth its $2,000 price tag? Well, you know the answer. It depends on what you need and to what you're comparing it. Oh, budget plays a role in that too. Look, I've gotten by without anything beyond my 15-inch MacBook Pro, 27-inch Retina 5K, and the 42 Panasonic HTV display that used to be there for years. This kind of display is simply not critical path for what we do. It does make me happy, though, and that counts for a lot. But the SW271 I had a chance to play with last year is just about half the price of the 321C, and I didn't want to give that one back either. I did. Could you live with less screen area and surrender a couple of percentage points less DCI P3 coverage? I can. Then again, for others of us out there, the 321C may just be a steal when compared to, say, the ISO CG319X. They share roughly the same real estate. They have similar sunshade design, similar design vocabulary. They share the same color gamuts, including the aforementioned 99% Adobe RGB and 98% DCI P3, really helpful when you're working with a Mac. But as I said, I, for one, don't need or want more than the BenQ 321C offers. Once again, you may have a different eye or different needs. The ISO does display full DCI 17:9 with concomitant increased resolution versus the 321C's 16:9 UHD. The ISO's maximum brightness specs out higher than the 321C's, again 350 versus 250 nits. The ISO outpoints the BenQ's contrast ratio 1500:1 versus 1300:1 and DPI 149:137. If these are important to you, I understand. But maybe they're not. Maybe you don't have that kind of cash. Or maybe you've been eyeing a different kind of answer to your monitor needs altogether. Say something like the $1,500 curved screen 32:9 aspect ratio LG 49 blah 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 ultra-wide HDR monitor. A lower DPI than the BenQ 108:137, lower contrast ratio 1000:1 versus 13,000:1, though once again higher brightness, same 350 versus 250 nits. It might be nice. I would be interested in having all four monitors on my desk at one time so I could compare them in real life. But in point of fact, I have neither the time nor inclination to do so. Instead, I want to hear from you again. Who among you have any one of these monitors? How do you use it? What else did you look at? What were your decision criteria? And how satisfied are you with your decision? Let me wrap it up this way. The BenQ SW321C is such a revelation to me for photography and video that it is changing my workflow. To my utter astonishment, I've actually reconfigured Final Cut Pro 10 so that the viewer is displayed on the BenQ and the rest of it resides on the iMacs. I smile every time I switch it on. I never saw that coming.